Welcome to Nighttime Conversations with Steve and Freja, where we take on the deeper subjects of relationships, life, love, sex, and personal happiness. I'm your host, Freja Njorden. Remember to like and subscribe. Today I have the honor of interviewing a very special guest on the subject of women stepping into their power. He's a therapist in transpersonal psychology, sex and relationship coach, women's empowerment coach, tantra master, and he's been doing Native American spiritual work for over 20 years. He's also the author of an amazing book, which I recommend you check out on Amazon, called The Pillars of Awesome Relationships. Thank you so much for being my guest, Marcus Ambrester.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, before we get started, just for the listener benefit, can you tell us in a nutshell what you do for people?
Oh, God, kind of whatever they really need in a way. So I'm a therapist and a sex and relationship coach. I do spiritual counseling, do all kinds of work in the shamanic realm, doing like energy work. The biggest piece of it really is getting rid of all the crap that we carry around that prevents us from being who we truly are in the world and who we are in our lives. So it's like we're taught growing up that we're supposed to be, a certain way, be a certain person, or like appear to be like the ways that are socially acceptable. And so much of what we were taught doesn't fit who we truly are. And the longer I've been doing this, one of the most poignant ways that shows up is, of course, in relationships, but also in our sexuality, and especially our relationship to our own sexuality and how much we accept who we truly are. And the more we accept who we truly are, the more we freely show up, in relationships as our true self. And when we do that, our joy and connection and gratitude just goes off the top of the scale.
So personal happiness is involved in this too, not just relationships. Okay. Yeah.
And I see the happiness as kind of the result. Not necessarily the goal, but it definitely is a side effect of the work that I do. Like walking around feeling really, really good all the time.
Oh, that's really
definitely
interesting.
A result that happens.
It's interesting that you say that. I've heard other people say that it's the other way around, that you find happiness and then everything else stems from there. And you're saying that in your work, that happiness is a byproduct of what happens.
And kind of one way that I think about this, in athletics, I never set a goal for performance. I always set my goals for training. And I figured if I did all the work that I need to do in training, then when race day comes, all I have to do is show up and have fun, and everything, all the results will take care of themselves. And so, like, if we do the work in relationships and we're really present with ourselves and we deal with our own emotional garbage and we're able to communicate really well and we make space for our partner's emotional garbage and we encourage them, create the space for them to be who they truly are, then the relationship's it's gonna be pretty freaking good. And so it's not like the goal of making a happy relationship can sometimes skip over all the really important steps in how to do that. Mm-hmm. And so I tend to focus on the process more than the outcome.
Okay. I like that a lot, actually. Because if you know how to do it, then you can do it at any point and any time.
Yeah.
If you understand the process or you know how to get yourself there, then that's something you can always do.
Yeah. And another piece about that is we can get into having that goal on an ego level. And when we're faced with a tough situation in a relationship, a lot of people can get really worried or freaked out about things not going well.
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes another roadblock in the way of connecting more deeply. And so if the goal is to connect more deeply, then when the tough things come up, they're one step closer to being able to connect like they want to connect, to resolve the problem that's coming up. And they don't have that added level of cognitive evaluation about, oh my God, we're not happy, we must be doing something wrong.
Right.
Or, when we get up into our heads like that, then it can come out as, oh my God, maybe he's not the one, maybe she's not the one, maybe this isn't the right relationship. When really all we need to do is take a breath and get really present with ourselves and really present with our partner, instead of doing all those mental gymnastics inside that just keep us kind of stuck emotionally, but they keep us from being really present in the moment, which is what creates a great relationship. And it's what creates the really happy times in the first place.
There's actually so much I want to ask you about tonight.
Ask it all.
I don't think I can fit it all into 3 days. So tonight we're going to talk about women, and specifically women who have issues with men. And
Awesome.
hopefully really get some nuggets of wisdom in there on not just stuff that they can do, but also how to get started if they would like to improve that situation. So you talk a lot about empowering women. I follow you. I've followed you for a while.
Yeah.
And what does that mean to you when we use those terms? Because a lot of people seem to mean them in different ways. So empowering women, what does that mean?
Yeah. Years ago, I heard a statistic, and I don't know if this is still accurate, but probably 10, 15 years ago when I heard it, it really stuck out to me, that more divorces happen when women are 42 years old than at any other time in their life.
That makes sense to me.
Age.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And more first-time affairs happen at age 42 when women are 42 years old than at any other age. And that combined with, I'm going to share personal stuff in here too, because
No, I love personal stuff.
Yeah. So when I was younger, I was always attracted to women in their early 40s, and I had no clue why. I knew that I was really mature for my age, and it felt like a good fit to date older women. But I got curious about what it was about women in their early 40s that was so attractive to me. And when I combined it with that stat about more divorces happening when women are 42 years old than any other age, it started becoming aware that that's a really transformative time when women are really open emotionally and spiritually, and they're in a growth period. Mm-hmm. And being around somebody who's in that kind of opening awareness and opening energy and growthful mindset, it feels really different, and it feels really good to me. And so then I started, I noticed that during that time period that sort of revolves around age 42, and some women get into it in their late 30s, and some women, don't get to it till their late 40s or even 50s for some women. What happens, the best explanation I've been able to come up with is women start outgrowing who they've been taught that they should be. And they start getting clear about who they truly are. And unless growing up you had parents that had done their own work and could make the space for you to become who you truly are and foster that growth and recognize elements of who you truly are, then your parents weren't in a place to be able to really, really help you. And, like, I recognized my daughter when she was really young, the part of being like intuitive and semi-psychic, whatever that means, is like, I recognized in my daughter when she was really young, the energetic one element of how she carries herself energetically. And then 2 years ago, she gets really quiet. We were in the middle of talking, and she gets really quiet and says, "Dad, I've got something that I feel like I need to tell you." And I was like, "Okay, come on." She said, "But it's something about myself." And I was like, "Okay, I'd love to hear it." She said, "But it's about me." And I was like, "Okay," and inside I'm going, "Okay, quit stalling, come on."
Mm-hmm.
But it was really, really tough for her. And this was at age 11. And she says, "Dad, I think I'm bisexual." And I just had this big smile on my face, and it was like, "Of course, sweetie, I've known that since you were 2 years old." And she was like, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "And it's okay?" And I was like, "It's wonderful. Of course, it's totally okay." And and then she had a bunch of doubts about, what would her sixth grade boyfriend think, and would he, feel hurt about it and all this. And I was like those things, the more okay you are with you, the more okay everybody else will be too.
Yeah.
And, and so like by 2 days later, she was completely over the hesitation and, in that little sixth grade drama that she had going on about, coming out to herself. And so, in the nearly 20 years I've been doing this, what I've seen over and over and over is that so many women were not given the support that they need to be who they truly are, while they were young. And so they weren't given the foundation of like emotional freedom to discover who they truly are as they grew older. And, like I look at my parents' generation and the generation before them, the women had a very specific role to play. And, and so my parents were born in the 30s, and like, you don't get divorced, although lots of people did get divorced, from that generation, but a whole lot of people, you just don't do that. And I look at my mom, and she, like, after my dad died, she blossomed. And the really strong woman that had lots to say, just like she came out of her shell. And so after my dad passed, I was like, there's the woman that I always knew was in there. Mm-hmm. But, growing up with the cultural training that she had, it wasn't okay to speak up. And whenever she did, what I noticed was my dad's insecurities would get triggered, and he would kind of shut her down as best he could in all the ways that men try and shut women down. And and that's just one example, and I've got, hundreds of them through my years of practice. But women were not given the support and guidance and freedom to be who they truly are. And I really don't want to be a man basher, because that's not how I feel about it at all. But the way that I see it functioning is that when men's insecurities get triggered by a woman standing in her power, that's when the problems start. And women have to ultimately make the choice to be quiet in face of the men trying to get them to be quiet, or not.
Yeah, that's a huge, huge subject, is men's insecurities kind of running the show. And our choice, we have two choices. We either lose the relationship and the person that we love because our truth is too much to handle, or we settle down and be quiet and hide ourselves in order to keep the peace. And I contacted you and I had a professional session with you and can definitely, I can speak for why it's beneficial for a woman who has issues with men to be helped by a man. And I'd like to hear from you what these two questions that I had for you, I'm going to combine them. What is the value in working with a man instead of a woman? So if I'm a woman and I want to step into my power, or I want to improve my relationships with men, because I love men, I get along with them, but somehow my romantic relationships with men have always had difficulties. And alongside that question, when I talked to a bunch of women about this conversation I was going to have with you, and I asked them, well, what do you want me to ask him? A lot of them said, well, why should we listen to a guy about stepping into our about stepping into our power? So I would love to hear what you have to say about those two things. I think they're related and combined.
Yeah, absolutely. My first thought on that is that women who have issues with men need healthy relationships with men in order to grow. And so there is the attitude is like only women can help other women. And that assumes, and it's accurate, like it's consistent with a lot of women's experience, is that there's no men who can really support them and nurture their growth. And again, I keep going back to my daughter. It's like my daughter is a 13-year-old badass who doesn't take crap off of anybody and still brings her heart wide open. And that's the way my women clients get where they're living, where their hearts are big and they know their worth, and they don't tolerate relationships where they're not feeling really heard and really seen. And, and that's a father's job. Like all women should have had that their entire lives from their fathers and their brothers and their uncles. They should have been brought up in that environment where they never doubt what it's like to have the support of the men around them. And when you have that, then you can much more easily discern between what being around a supportive man feels like compared to an unsupportive man. And
you need that.
Absolutely.
Need it.
Yeah. And and that's where, like, men who have issues with women, a lot of times they go to women therapists and women coaches. And I think it's awesome because they need to feel what it feels like to be in a woman's presence and have support, to feel accepted and to get that acceptance that they're craving so badly, and also be called out and going deeper into their own heart and being able to share more openly without, the fear of judgment, which is something that so many men struggle with. And the same's true for women. It's like if women need, women who have issues with men, it's like working with a man who can show up and have really healthy boundaries and not want anything from them, but only want the best for them, then, and who
That's
has a
super
pretty good
uncommon.
It is super uncommon. I wish it weren't so. And I personally would love to train 10,000 men to be that way and then have them go train another 10,000 men.
I would love for you to train 10,000 men and unleash them on the world. It would be amazing.
Yeah. And, one of the men that I work with, well, women show up for therapy and coaching like 4-to-1 to men. Men generally just don't, they're really shy about stepping into therapy or any kind of personal development stuff. And the men that I have worked with, they're really good guys. They really are. And they've, so like with a lot of men, I wind up doing a lot of storytelling of like personal stories just to show what it's like to show up with your heart open and to talk about being confronted, something in the world confronting you with, something that really scares you inside, and how to respond in a way where you show up with your heart and you take responsibility for the insecurity and how to communicate when one of your insecurities gets triggered, and how to not block the potential emotional closeness that's possible. And so with so many of the guys that I work with, it really is the case that they're really good guys. They just don't know how to do it yet, and they haven't been shown. And so when they feel like they're backed into a corner by one of their insecurities getting triggered, they respond the way we as men have been taught, which is to be a bully or to shut down and just act broken, and then we wind up acting needy. And and we don't have many men that have really learned how to do it really well, to be able to show up and bring their heart and maintain their sense of their own masculinity. And that fear of losing their masculinity is something that just, it rocks men to the core. And it's possible to bring your heart and have your masculinity too, and to bring your heart in a masculine way that gives the woman, especially if you date strong women, like really strong, powerful women, showing up in a really powerful masculine presence that's a open-hearted, a heart-present masculine presence. It gives the woman the chance to just be in her feminine energy, where, she doesn't have to be in her masculine energy as much, getting things done, making things happen in the world. She just gets to be feminine and really like swim in her own feminineness. And, and he gets to love big and be loved back and feel like a really powerful man with his heart wide open. And that's the goal. That's what I love to see happen for everybody.
It's interesting that you say that. That was actually going to be one of the last questions that I asked you, but I'm going to skip there. But before I do, I'm just going to say that one of the things that made a really huge difference for me after I spoke to you professionally is because I honestly have never had a real positive male role model in my life. And I had no example of how a male was supposed to relate to me. So after our professional time together, I was able to see clearly in my life which men were beneficial to me. And I don't mean that in a using way. I just mean which friends are actually my real friends and have a healthy relationship with me, and which friends are the guys that are kind of douchey, hanging on, like looking to get laid maybe at some point or somehow. And I was able to call my friendships and cultivate the ones that were very important to me. And in the last year, because I think I saw you maybe a year and a month ago or something like that.
Something like that.
I've been able to have really healthy relationships. I focus on friendships, not any kind of romance, because I figure it's good to take a break from that. And having those male friendships as a good example of masculine interaction has been fantastic. And I think that the value in that, in having a role model, showing, this is what it's supposed to feel like when a man relates to you in a genuine, open-hearted, positive, without the underlying, hey, I'm trying to get something. And until you see it as a woman, until you actually experience that, it's really difficult to recognize, which is why I think that a lot of very successful, powerful, intelligent women are still having trouble with men. It's like, why are you having trouble with men? Why can't you stick up for yourself? I think they've never seen it. And they've never had that in their life, and that's why. So
I think you're dead on.
What you were, that thing that you just said about masculinity, there's a lot of stuff flying around the internet right now about polarity and how, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here, and how a woman's highest calling is to surrender and submit to a man, and people are clamoring over this. And it kind of rubs me the wrong way. I feel like
Me too.
I feel like it's avoidant and kind of magical thinking that a woman can avoid taking responsibility for herself, and all she has to do is find the right dominant masculine guy, and he's gonna wave his big magic wand, and everything is going to be right in her world. She's not going to have to do any healing work. She's not going to have to face her issues because he's just going to make everything right. It's going to be constant desire, constant screaming orgasms, even if right now she's not orgasmic because she's blocked herself off. So am I right in thinking that this is a bunch of bullshit, or am I missing something and sort of being in my masculine by feeling resistant towards this idea of like, I don't know, it feels like feminine submission is not really, you know what I'm talking about, right?
I totally know what you're talking about.
Makes me crazy.
I think it's well, do you know the term spiritual bypass?
Yes.
Where it's like you try and get all holy and spiritual so you don't have to deal with your shit. And it's like instead of dealing with your relationship stuff, you worry about the great crystals in the sky are not aligned, and it's like, well, that may be true. The great crystals in the sky may not be aligned, and that has some effect, but also you need to sit down and have a fucking conversation, about what's going on. You need to tell the truth about what's going on. You need to confront somebody. Maybe you need to be confronted. And so, like, the spiritual bypass is a way of avoiding dealing with the thing directly. And the way that whole idea strikes me is like a patriarchal bypass to women's empowerment. And it's not that it's entirely wrong, but I think it's incomplete. I think it's not complete at all. So what I would say is, I would get rid of the word submit, and I would say that in the presence of a man who is truly honoring her as a woman, she can surrender to the divine goddess that flows through her. And so that would be how I would counter like that thought. And there's a lot that goes into that. But with like my thought while you were saying it, I was thinking, okay, she's got to surrender to a man. I was going to add in who upholds her as a total badass woman. Like I would throw that in there. And the big piece is about integrity. And so there's two parts to integrity. The first part is doing what you say you're going to do and not doing what you say you're not going to do, and telling the truth. And that part we all know. The other part is about bringing all of who we are into the world and bringing all of who I am to the relationship. And in doing that, it not only creates a space for you to bring all of who you are to the relationship, but if I'm fully showing up, I'm going to recognize all the places that you're not fully showing up. And if you're fully showing up, you're going to recognize the places that I'm hiding. And we're going to feel the gap in integrity there. We're going to feel the gap or the distance between us in terms of emotional closeness. And so, like, that, I think, is the conversation that needs to be happening. Not about submitting, because that just doesn't sound good. That sounds like the patriarchy's version of women's empowerment. It really does.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure lots of people wouldn't like hearing that and will offer an argument. And I would love for them to get in touch with me and let's have that conversation.
Yeah, so if you're listening, actually, I would love to be part of that conversation too. So if you're listening and if that kind of thing has appealed to you, please get in touch because that's a conversation that I'm very interested in. Okay, so what happens when a woman steps into her power or begins to?
All hell breaks loose.
Yeah, it does.
And I say that
it's really
only half jokingly.
No, but it really does, though. It's terrifying.
Yeah. No, the first thing is if she doesn't have the support and she's not prepared for it, she's going to feel like she's going crazy. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that's way too common. And so she's going to feel like she has to separate herself from who she's been in the past, because who she's been has been essentially who she was taught that she's supposed to be, or who she thinks she was supposed to be. And she wants to step into who she truly is. And that's the empowerment piece about becoming her true, authentic self. And what happens a lot of the time is that women point their finger at their husbands, and this is why more divorces happen at age 42. It's like during that empowerment transition, like the easiest, simplest thing to do is to point your finger at your husband and say, you are the reason that I'm unhappy. Where in a lot of cases, like, he has been a perfect fit for her hiding in that image of who she thinks she's supposed to be. And so he's acted in accordance with her hiding. So when she does start to emerge and bring her true self to the relationship, he's got a problem with it. Now, there are ways of doing that when both people, have the communication skills and the emotional skills to be able to navigate this kind of transition. It's possible for both people to grow bigger than that problem that they're facing. But
so it's not essential. It's not essential to get divorced or to leave your partner. You can make it through together if you're partnered.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's not going to be the same relationship, and because she's not going to be the same woman, and he, at the end of the process, he's not going to be the same man, because like everything will shift, and it'll be an awesome, amazing shift that's going to be a blessing for them both. And if they're not growing at the same rate, then there's going to be disconnect. And if he's not growing and actually excited for the change and growth in her, she's going to run away from him pretty fast.
So when all hell breaks loose, as you put it, I noticed, at least for myself, a lot of people get really angry and insulting, and there's a lot of backlash when you start sticking up for yourself as a woman, even in small ways, like very small ways. Somehow it incites a lot of anger. How do you deal with that kind of thing? Not you, but how do women handle it?
You have to know the truth and not believe the lies. So that patriarchal way of thinking has also been internalized, so that like women oppress themselves into saying, I shouldn't speak up in a lot of cases. You know, I shouldn't be strong. I shouldn't make waves. He's not going to like this. You know, he's not going to be happy, which implies, so I shouldn't do it. So I should not do it because he's not going to be happy. Or they may, you know, it may be their family, not just their husband, but their family also. It's like, oh, there's a lot of people aren't going to like that, you know, if I tell the truth. And like those thoughts inside our heads are like self-oppression. It's like where we've taken on that kind of oppression from outside that says, don't be who you truly are. And we're putting it on ourselves at that point. And so we have to recognize the difference between those lies and the truth. You know, the lies say, don't be who you truly are. Don't be as big as you truly are. Don't step into your power like you're capable of, because it'll be bad. Like, those are the lies. The truth is, it's going to be a blessing for you and the world and everybody else who's on board. You know, and when a woman stands in her power, it is a instant jerk eliminator. You will get rid of all the jerks in your life by standing in your power.
Yeah.
So the more you step into your power, the more jerks that you eliminate from your life. And it may cost you your marriage because you may be married to a jerk. It may cost you some family relationships because you may have grown up in a family full of jerks who want you to be small because they can't handle you being big. And, you know, that may happen. You're going to gain something immeasurable in the process. And you're going to gain a sense of emotional independence that paves the way for a more powerful relationship than anything you may have ever known. So, like, so many of us were brought up on this idea that the perfect relationship is two people that need each other really badly. And so they just glue themselves together, and that is okay. But that idea is built on, you know, needing a sense of security in somebody else, you know, by somebody else's presence. And when you try and build a relationship on being okay because that person's there, that puts a lot of pressure on the relationship. And most of the time, it means it's not okay for you to be who you truly are, because if my sense of security is dependent on you being okay with me, then I can only share those parts of me that you're okay with. And that means I've got to hide the rest of who I am, because if I share all of me, you might not like it, and then my sense of security goes out the window. And so ideally, and I know, like, this is a big thing, but ideally you have two people that feel really secure within themselves, and then they can come together without really needing anything from each other. Relationship is about the connection and the joy and the play of it all. And, you know, and then you can intertwine your lives in a wonderful way that's not based on that fear of losing that sense of security. You know, then you're free to love really big, and you're free to love really authentically, which means bringing all of who you are. And there's there's a sense of, like, it's unbelievable, the sense of freedom that comes from fully showing up, bringing all of who you are with somebody that you love. And it's scary, but it's a pretty amazing thing. And you can't get it. You can't get that sense of freedom and bigness, and you can't get the incredible, deeply connected love if you're not bringing all of who you truly are.
Right.
You know, and women were taught not to bring who they truly are from the time they were little.
Yeah, I'd agree with that one because you want to be nice. You don't want to upset anybody. You want to be careful. You want to just make sure that nobody's getting upset with you. And I noticed that when I stopped putting as much energy into that, a lot more people unearthed themselves as jerks. And I was also okay with those jerks not being in my life. So my social circle actually became much smaller, but much more authentic and deeper. That was really, really great. What role does sex have to play in this dynamic?
I think it's vital to be, like, really immersed in our sexual energy for a lot of reasons. Of course, I just said that. I don't know what the hell that means, but it is important. So let me see if I can explain it. In one way, our sexual, our sex life is kind of a snapshot of what's going on emotionally and energetically and spiritually and mentally. And so after like 20 years of working with couples, like, whatever's going on sexually is a perfect metaphor for what's going on in the rest of the relationship. You know, whether it's couples that only have sex like 2 or 3 times a year and they're both frustrated about it, but they don't know what to do to make it okay again, or one person really wants sex and the other person acts like they don't care. It's like all that stuff is getting played out. Like, that's what's going on sexually is a result of what's going on emotionally and mentally and spiritually inside. And, you know, and some couples have sex 3 or 4 times a day and there's no connection emotionally and spiritually whatsoever. And you know, a couple of months ago, I had a talk with a family member that I'm not very close to. She was going through a divorce and needed to talk, and so I made the time, you know, gladly, because I never got to see them. And I said, you know, what was going on sexually? And her answer was very telling. She said, I always made sure he was happy sexually, so that wasn't a problem. And I was like, what? It was like she didn't have any sexual needs at all, but sex to her was her obligation to keep him satisfied. And so that, and to me, that was like a facepalm moment. I was just like, oh Lord, like, that's so 1950s. And so it didn't speak to her sexual needs at all. It didn't speak to any potential connection between them. And you know, somebody sent me a message. Somebody was really frustrated. I was a client who's dating and sent me a message, and it just said, why do men only think with their dicks? And I said, well, that's only true for men who their emotional and spiritual elevator doesn't go any higher than their dick. And she was like, yep, that's it right there. So I just got to quit dating guys who or on the short bus of elevators. And it's like, yeah, there's too many metaphors into one thing, but yes. And when men, feel their own physical, raw sexual desire and also have their heart wide open and want to connect, deeply and emotionally, and are open to being stirred or moved, in an energetic and spiritual level, then they don't only want to have sex that's just physical. They don't, they don't want just the physical release that can happen from sex. And so, and so many women, have never had the experience of being with a man who's said no to them. About 5 years ago, I had just started dating a woman, and she was not in a good place emotionally and wanted to have sex. And I was like, no, like, you're not all here. You're, like, I can't feel your heart. Mm-hmm. And if I can't feel your heart, you don't get my cock. That's just the way it is. And and she was like, what? Like, and like, she just couldn't fathom it. And if men haven't done the emotional work to get in touch with their heart, then the greatest pleasure they can think of and even comprehend will just be the pleasure they feel in their cock when they ejaculate. Mm-hmm. And so like, I've had so many women come in to work with me over the years who will walk in the door and the first thing they say is, I don't care if I ever have sex again. And, and I can feel, like, intuitively, I can feel their sexual energy. I know that they are a highly, highly sexual woman, and saying they don't care if they ever have sex again doesn't fit at all who they truly are. But what they're really saying is, I don't ever want to have sex again if it's going to be only this guy showing up with his cock and not his heart.
So how would a woman know or attract or encourage that type of man to come into her life if she was, let's just say she's single?
Yeah. The first thing is to tell the universe, if you buy into all that law of attraction crap, which I 100% do, the first thing is to tell the universe, is like, I want a man that brings his heart just as big as his balls. Mm-hmm. And then whenever she's got to be able to discern within herself when she feels the excitement just physically or feeling it physically and in her heart. And so when she's in the presence of a man who's only and I'm gonna say this a specific way, and I certainly don't want to sound crude, but this makes it very, very plain and very simple to understand. So when she's in the presence of a man who's only looking for a wet hole, mm-hmm. She, is really clear that she's not going to feel his heart. She's not going to feel any connection, or she's not going to feel much connection. She's not going to feel much of his heart, and she's not going to be satisfied with it. So it's really important that she stands in her confidence and says, like, I'm attracted to you, but only physically, but I can't feel your heart. Like, if you bring your heart, then it's on. but I can't feel your heart, dude. So don't bother talking to me.
And she has to be okay with whatever his response is going to be. That even if it is like, what the fuck are you talking about? And walking away from the relationship.
Yeah, and probably what his response is going to be, if it's consistent with what I hear from so many women, he's going to say, "You fucking bitch, you don't even like cock anyway," or something to that effect, or "You don't know what you're missing," or some kind of way of covering his insecurity of just getting called out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's like a good friend of mine just said, this guy's been bugging her, blowing up her phone for a week, and she finally said, "Look, dude, I am not interested in you. Do us both a favor and lose my number," because he was really blowing up her phone. And his immediate response was, "You're a fucking bitch anyway," and went on from there and was just nasty. She sent me a screenshot, and I was like, that sounds like a guy that it's good to lose out of your life.
Yeah, you don't want to nice that kind of person into your bedroom, into your life, into your time and energy fields, because as long as you're placating to them, they're going to hang around.
Yeah. And she hadn't blocked him already before that point because she didn't want to be mean.
Mm-hmm.
And he, and she was giving him some pretty clear signals. She wasn't interested, but he was ignoring them. And so like she was gently laying down those boundaries, and he was not respecting them. So then you have to lay down firmer boundaries. And like having sex with a man who doesn't respect your boundaries is a recipe for disaster. And so you got to set down firmer and firmer boundaries. And women are taught that it's not okay to do that. It's not okay to set boundaries, especially with men. But it's not okay to set boundaries. If you do, you're mean, you're a bitch, and and every other frickin' insult there is. It's not okay to set boundaries, and that's how insecure men keep women from confronting them on their insecurities. Like, no woman wants to be a bitch.
Nope, certainly not.
So, yeah, and the truth is it's okay to set boundaries, and it's necessary if you're going to be happy. And if you don't set boundaries with guys that are jerks, you're never going to make the space in your life for guys that are really, really awesome.
So would you say that sex improves once you start having boundaries? Like if sex is great, like, or let's just say medium to good, it's not that big of a deal. Would you say that it gets better if you start stepping into your power, or is there room for not being all that sexual, or do women usually sort of blossom in that area?
I think women's sexual energy is directly linked to their sense of personal power. And I've been looking for evidence that that's not true, but I think it really, really is. Mm-hmm. And so as women step into their power, their sexual energy grows. And so when you start setting boundaries, when you step into your power, I would say your sex gets better exponentially. Not just better, but really, really better.
Uh-huh. And that doesn't necessarily mean, and I'm saying this not because I worry about it, but because I know that there are some people who have this type of mindset. It doesn't mean that you're going to turn into a raging nymphomaniac who's out having sex all the time with all kinds of people. It can also look like being more discriminatory or discriminating with who you're having sex with, right?
Yeah, so that argument you just mentioned is one way that insecure men keep women from stepping into their power, and specifically stepping into their power sexually. It's by, if a woman steps into her power, then the way to keep her from doing that is to tell her she's going to be a complete slut and start having indiscriminate sex. Mm-hmm. And But that accusation is based on not having any heart presence. It was based on the male view that sex is only physical. So if a woman's empowered, she's going to go have this only physical, not heart-connected sex everywhere. And the truth is, the more that a woman steps into her power, the fewer people that are really suitable partners there are. And so she may be having a lot more sex, but she's going to be having it with a lot fewer people because, there's a lot fewer people doing the intense emotional work necessary to be able to provide the presence and connection that she's going to require in a sexual partner.
I'm going to press pause for just one moment. So I had just paused the recording to say something privately, and I was encouraged to share this publicly, so I'm going to share it, even though I was going to keep it secret. So I had a breakup a year and a half ago, or a year ago, a little over a year ago, and for the first time in my life, I've actually not been actively having a lot of partners. Now, I don't mean, like, when I was in my relationships, of course, I didn't have a partner. I had my one partner. I haven't been having sex because even though there are very attractive men in my life who would want to date me, who would want to have sex with me, and I can feel my body responding to them and wanting them on a physical level, it's not really what I want, and it's not good enough for me because I want full spectrum interaction. And that doesn't mean that I need a committed relationship where I'm like, oh, well, I'm holding out for Mr. Right, or I'm holding out for a marriage. I don't even think that I will ever be married again. But when I engage, it's got to be good enough for me. And it's a really interesting and quite wonderful feeling. Because even though I'm an extremely sexual person, and I always have been, it's okay not to have it. It's okay to have standards. It's okay to like somebody and to be into somebody and to say, no, that's not what I'm wanting.
Yeah. Yeah. And kind of the rule that I have for myself is to have sex with everybody who can fully show up in all the ways that I require being met in order to get naked with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if that means there's several people that show up in my life, great. If that means there's nobody that's showing up in my life, then great. But, my first, the first lover in my life is me. And so if I'm not being true to me in having the standards that, that I really want and that are satisfying to me, then nobody else can, I'm not going to be satisfied with anybody else.
And I'm not saying I'm better than anybody. It's just I'm where I'm at. So if somebody can meet me there, then I would love to have that exchange with them, that interaction, that relationship and connection.
Yeah.
And when somebody isn't, then what ends up happening is, and I used to do this when I was younger, I would give to them. So it wasn't like we were meeting on equal terms, but instead I would give them something, and I would give them my energy, or I would give them my attention or my time, and they weren't really meeting me. It was more like they were using me. Now, I don't mean using
with
me
your
for sex.
consent.
And I don't mean just using me for sex. I mean, it was almost like I was working in some way to uplift them. And
yeah, totally.
I'm like, I'm not working here. This is not my job to uplift you.
Yeah. Totally.
Meet me where I am. Yeah. And it's a weird thing not to be working to uplift people. So what can women do if they would want to get started on this journey to self-empowerment, and they're feeling like, yeah, I can really see where working with a man would be beneficial?
Well, I'd say the first thing is whether you wind up working with a man or a woman, I would sit down and make a list of all the frustrations you have in your life and like get really clear about the areas of your life that you want to be better. You know, these are all the things in my life that I want to make awesome. And and making that kind of list, if you're used to really beating yourself up, that could just be more ammunition to beat yourself up. But if you do it with the right intent and say, okay, this is where I'm starting, and I'm going to start crossing these things off my list over the next few years to where I'm walking around without these frustrations and feeling really, really good, then, it can be a good idea to set, in a way it's kind of goal setting.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody came to me with that list and said, these are all the things, which is kind of what people do, whether they have it written down or not, then there's a natural response to each one of those frustrations of how do you want things to be? And, that's the first place I would go. And a lot of people don't even have an awareness of how they want things to be, because it's sometimes they don't have an awareness, but more likely they don't feel like it's okay to have the desire that they have. They don't feel like it's okay to want the things they want because either they don't have the right to want something as good as they want it, or they feel like it's not possible, so they shut the desire down. They just know they're frustrated, and so they feel stuck because they don't believe it's possible to make things better, and they don't know how to make things better, so they dare not hope that things get better. And so the first thing I would say is get really clear about where you are. And even if you can't do that, it's that's part of our job as coaches and therapists and healers, is to help people get clear. So, for anybody listening, if you're not, if you feel drawn to work with either one of us, reach out. And you don't even have to know what it's about. And I have people that reach out to me and say, I have no idea why I'm calling you. I just know that I need to work with you. And, and that's where we start. And where to start? You start with a desire for things to be better. And you don't even have to be really clear about what it is. But, if you can make that list of what's frustrating in your life and what you're not happy with, or how you want things to change or what you want to change, that's great. And if, specifically for the women who have issues with men, that working with a man can be really beneficial. And I had part of my graduate program, my psychology master's degree, was we had to do therapy with a therapist outside of school for the duration of the graduate program. And my ex-wife and I went in for, I guess the first 2 years of it, we went in together for couples counseling. And then I started going in by myself, and we were seeing a female therapist, and about 3 sessions into our individual work, she was like, I don't really know there's anything I can do for you. And I said, well, something's stirring underneath. And I'm sitting in the room with an attractive woman that I'm not having sex with, and who's not going to have sex with me. And she stopped me and she said, you've been taken advantage of a lot. And I just lost it and just started crying. And I was like, I wasn't even aware of feeling that way inside. And she actually scooted her chair closer to me. And she was like, okay, take a breath. You know, when I was able, she said, okay, look at me. She said, you're a wonderful guy, and I am never going to fuck you. And and what came up inside was anger. Not that she wasn't going to have sex with me. It was anger that she better not. And so, like when I came in the next week, she said, how you doing after our talk last week? And I was like, I was really rattled. What I said, look, I don't care if you're attracted to me. You take it somewhere else. Don't bring it to me. And she goes, yeah, that would be a horrible violation. You need to feel safe here. And I was like, yeah. And she said, do you hear how much that speaks to you being taken advantage of in your life? And I was like, holy shit, yeah. Like, I got it, get it.
Mm-hmm.
And, and so having that space where I felt totally safe to be myself, to be the man that I am in the presence of a woman that supported me, that could feel my sexual energy but wasn't going to engage with it like in a personal way, but only there's a support and a guide and a coach, that was pretty profound. And it, and that's what I wind up doing with women is like encouraging them to step into the biggest version of their sexual energy and their sexual, and their sexuality, and encouraging them how to set boundaries with men that can't fully show up and meet them. And it's like I feel their powerful presence without trying to take any for myself. And it's like when we're talking about women standing in their power, that's something that fathers and brothers and uncles and family members and teachers should have done from the time the girls are little bitty anyway. And it's like it's not just other women's job to teach women to stand in their power. It's men's jobs too, and men have woefully failed at supporting the women in their lives, for millennia now. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I wanted to jump in on that point and say that that's a really huge subject, and it's one where I think it's really, really important to find at least a few. And it's amazing how hard it is to find men in your life who would not fuck you if they were given the chance. And and they all say, oh, that's not what I'm after. But it's a truth that many, regardless of their marital status, if you gave them the green light, they would hop on that. And a lot of them give a lot of subtle hints, like, if you ever need any help with that kind of thing.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm not against friends being sexually attracted to each other. I'm not against friends having sex or things like that. But when you as a woman, when you constantly are the one that has to have these boundaries that are being pushed against all the time, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And it feels really unpleasant. So to find those types of men who have enough integrity to hear your no, even if they would have an interest, to hear your no and leave it at that.
Yeah.
Not to hear your no and then to be constantly just leaning against it a little bit. That's not very comfortable.
No, it's not. Yeah, and I wanted to speak to that earlier, and I'm glad you brought it up again. There's, yeah, you know, while you were talking, I thought about that Chris Rock stand-up routine where he says, as a woman, every man you've ever encountered has offered you dick.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, hello, let me hold the door for you. Would you like some dick? Here, let me help you with your groceries. Would you like some dick? And that's a very nice dress. I'd like to stick my dick in it. And it's like, yeah, that's there. And that, like, as a man, I can say that physical attraction, yeah, does exist all the time, everywhere. The difference in, the difference is in recognizing the gap between having sex with a woman who's fully present and only engaged physically. Like, if a woman's not present, the sex to me is not satisfying. If she is not 100% on board, where I can feel, it's like essentially if I can feel her heart radiating from every inch of her skin, then the sex is satisfying. And, if I can't feel that, then I don't want it. And that's the piece that, where I said before, like if the emotional and energetic elevator only goes up to their cock, then it's like the only thing they're going to be interested in is just the physical. And so I see that as, an education problem where the men need to be educated for how to engage their heart and engage with a woman with their heart. And then the men will recognize that just because he feels a little spark of electricity in seeing an attractive woman, that doesn't mean that sex would be satisfying. It's like you can probably have a better experience, masturbating on your own than having sex with a woman who's not present with you.
Mm-hmm. Or getting her to say yes when she doesn't really want to.
Yeah. And it comes from a place of, of being really hopeful. It's just that he's an idiot and and doesn't recognize that like if she eventually gives in and has sex with you, it's still not going to touch the place inside that's longing to be touched. It's like it's still not going to be satisfying emotionally and in the deeper levels, which is where that hunger kind of comes from in the first place. And so if men need this education, women are getting frustrated with relationships because men, don't have this education of being able to show up and meet them, more fully. Then, the questions come up. Do we educate the men? Do we just work with the women to fully stand in their power? And and I'd love for the men to come and work with me and work with coaches everywhere and to work with you and to really grow within themselves. And, it seems that men are terrified of doing that. And so I believe, like my thought on it, the piece that sort of links the two is that men grow through challenge. And most of the time, men don't come into therapy until they get challenged by a woman that they want to be close to. And so one of the best things for, us as a people, as a species, is for all the women on the planet to learn to stand in their power, to be able to feel totally safe within themselves, and to not feel threatened by getting that energy from men. You know, when a man's constantly offering his cock to you and trying to, like, literally and figuratively, like, slide it in, you know, with, like, to kind of weasel his way around your defenses to get in with you. Like, for a woman to say, hey, I feel that chemistry, that potential between us, but I can't feel your heart. And if I could feel your heart, then it would be so fucking on. Like, you know, there would just be a trail of clothing leading back to the bedroom. But until I feel your heart, you will not get anywhere close to me. You know, it's like, I love you. You're a great guy. And that potential is not going to happen, you know, unless I can feel all of you. And, you know, and like saying it that way, you know, is a really respectful way of confronting a man. And it also is very affirming for the woman to communicate it that way and to come from that place where she's saying, hey, you know, I've got these really awesome standards in my life, and I love sex, and I want to have sex, and I want to have wild, crazy sex. But unless I can feel you fucking my heart and my spirit first, you don't get to fuck my body.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's really difficult to realize the difference in feeling when most of our culture right now seems to be swaying towards sexual attention for a woman's appearance being the ultimate thing to strive for across the board. And I see that even with women who are, like, they're promoting this, like women who are supposed to be like business coaches, business positions I've noticed where in the past, even 5 years ago, you would think of them as being rather conservative looking, or, you know, like accounting is a somewhat serious affair. But what I'm seeing online is that they're promoting their business by using lingerie pictures and basically pornographic faces and poses. And it's all about getting sexual attention and all. And I have no problem with sexual attention. I'm very sex positive, but I think that women, when you step into your power, you recognize the difference between somebody giving you sexual attention and somebody actually valuing you for who you are. And when you don't understand that difference, then you'll tend to have your sexuality used as opposed to appreciated.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you know, and I've got lots of friends that are like in that world of online marketing and women's empowerment, and they do post a lot of pictures with their message, like with their content. And the piece that I always look for is, like, is she feeling really sexy, or is she looking for attention? And if she's feeling really sexy, then absolutely go for it. It's like, wear those boots, you know, like wear that skirt and, you know, and just completely rock it. If she's looking for attention, like, I appreciate the shape of a really nice body. And, you know, I love beautiful people. And, like, I appreciate the shape of the body. And there's not a whole lot of attraction there because, you know, it's like once you get past the shape of the body, they don't have much to offer. You know, there's no connection there. And all of us, even the most shut down people, inside we really are longing for that connection, even if we're not aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what satisfies the hunger inside. is that soul-to-soul, heart-to-heart connection.
So how can people get a hold of you? If somebody wanted to work with you, to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
The best way is follow me on Facebook and just follow my personal page. It's Marcus Ambrester, and you can send me a message there. And that's really the easiest way.
Okay.
That's the best way. Just follow me on Facebook. Just I don't know how much room I have for more friends on my personal page, but they can send me a friend request or just follow me.
Okay, wonderful. Did you have anything else to add today before I wrap it up?
Yeah, we covered a lot.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you to come back and talk about men at length.
Awesome.
So I want to let you know
cool.
that.
Actually, I would invite everybody over the days following listening to this podcast to put up their comments or arguments or questions. Like, really let us know, because those arguments contain the pieces that need to be addressed in women stepping into their power. And so I'd love to hear it. And and if there's enough of them, then maybe we can do a second show just to address all the questions and concerns that have come up for people.
I would love that. Certainly. Well, thank you so much. Yeah. It was wonderful to talk to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, same here.